Assalamu alaikum. My name is Nashanza and I'm here to present on a topic which is fundamentals of chemistry. Before moving on towards fundamental of chemistry, I'd like to tell that what is chemistry and why it is important. Most of the chemical reactions taking place in our body and outside the body, in our surrounding, in our environments, are just because of chemistry. The food we take in and the medicines we take in are chemistry, and there are various chemical reactions in our surrounding and they are chemistry. So first of all, I'll tell you that what are the basics of fundamental chemistry. Fundamental, like, basics and the fundamentals are the same thing. So first of all, I'll talk about atom. What is atom? Atom is the smallest particle of an element which can be further subdivided into electrons, protons and neutrons. Electrons are revolving outside the nucleus, and protons and neutrons are inside the nucleus. Neutrons are neutral, while protons are positively charged, electrons are negatively charged, and revolve around the shell and revolve in the shell around the nucleus. uh, Now I'll talk about the valence electrons. What are the valence electrons? Valence electrons, the electrons which are revolving around the nucleus in a valence shell, are in the outermost shell, are usually known as valence electrons. Next, elements. Next come elements. Elements are made up of one kind of atoms, and we know that elements plays important role in the periodic table, as the periodic table consists of elements like hydrogen, nitrogen, or carbon, oxygen. They are the most commonly used elements. And then I'll like to tell about the chemical and physical properties of the element. What are the chemical and physical properties of the element? Physical properties: characteristics that do not involve in a change in a simple chemical characteristic makeup. And physical and chemical properties are characteristics that are involved in a change in a sample's chemical nature. Physical properties may be temperature, color, melting point, boiling, melting point, etc. Rather, the chemical properties are rusting of iron, combustion of gasoline, tarnishing of silver, hardening of cement, etc. um, Now I'll talk about the periodic table, as I know that elements are totally concerned with periodic tables. So in a periodic table there are periods and groups. 7 horizontal rows are periods and 16 vertical columns are groups. International standard may be 1 to 18, and US standard 1A to 8A and 1B to 8B. The main groups are the 1A and 2A columns. Main groups columns are 1A and 2A, they are two groups, and columns 3A to 8A. Transition metals which are present in between the metals and non-metals. 3B to 2B are these transition metals, and inner transition metals are 14 groups between 3B and 4B: lactinides and actinides. And then I have told you before that there are metals on the left side and non-metals on the right side, and semi-metals are metalloids in between the metals and non-metals, and they have the characteristics of metals and non-metals. Metals are the good conductors and non-metals are the poor conductors. So we usually call them metals: alkali metals, alkaline earth metals, etc. And non-metals are halogens and etc. There are also noble gases. These are the ideal gases, noble gases. Now I'll talk about some chemical properties of the elements, which are intensive properties and extensive properties. Intensive properties are the independent of sample size, like taste and melting point, whereas extensive properties are dependent on sample size, length and volume. The structure of atom I have discussed with you, as I have as before. So now I'll talk about atomic number. In periodic table, you know that atomic number and atomic masses are given along with the elements. So what is atomic number? Atomic number is a number of protons in an atomic atom's nucleus, equivalent to the number of the electrons around the atom's nucleus. And mass number, what is mass number? The sum of the number of protons and the number of neutrons in an atom's nucleus. Now there's another term which is isotope. Atoms with identical atomic numbers but different mass numbers are isotopes, like carbon 13, carbon 12. But the mostly used carbon is carbon 12. Carbon 12 have 6 protons, 6 electrons and 6 neutrons, whereas carbon 13 has 6 protons, 6 electrons and 7 neutrons. Atomic mass, what is atomic mass? The weighted average of the isotopic masses of the elements naturally occurring isotopes. So now moving on towards the molecule, compound. Molecule is a combination of elements like H2O, water is a molecule. And then moving on towards the matter. What is matter? Matter is something that has mass and occupies volume. So matter can be substances or mixture. So substances are further divided into elements and compounds, whereas mixture is for the homogeneous mixture or heterogeneous mixture. Molecules, ions and chemical bonds, what are these? As I have told you about molecules, ions are the charged species, and chemical bonds. Now I'll talk about chemical bonds. Like covalent bond. First of all, covalent bond results when two atoms share several electrons, typically a non-metal bonded to a non-metal. And are some models like ball stick model and space filling models. Ionic bonds are transfer of one or more electrons from one atom to another. An electrostatic attraction between charged particles, typically a metal bonded to a non-metal. Ion, I have told you, a charged particle. And a, a ion an ion is further divided into two different species like cations and anions. Cations are a positively charged particles. Metal tends to form cations, whereas anions are negatively charged particles. Non-metals tends to form anions. For example, NaCl is the most common example of the ionic bonding. And there are chemical symbols on various levels, like microscopic level, macroscopic level. Now I'll tell you about the what is molecular mass and formula mass. Sum of atomic masses of all atoms in a molecule is molecular mass, and for sum of atomic mass of all the atoms in a formula unit of any compound is molecular or ionic. Of an compound, molecular or ionic is formula mass. These terms are specifically used in Avogadro's number and a mole. Avogadro number is a 1 mole of any substance contains 6.022 into 10 to the power 23 formula units. 1 mole of any substance is equivalent to its molecular or formula mass. Avogadro number. 1 mole of one substance contain, as I have already told you, 6.022 into 10 to the power 23 formula units. 1 mole of a substance is equivalent to its molecular or formula mass. Now moving on towards the reactions with limiting amounts of reactants. There are some limiting reactants and there are some excess reactants. Limiting reactants, the reactants that is present in limiting amount, and these are limiting reactants, and which are present in excess amounts are excess reactants, as you can said by names, limiting and excess reactants. So moving on towards the next, there comes the percentage composition and empirical formulas. Percentage compositions expressed by identifying the elements present and giving the mass percent of each. Empirical formula it tells only the ratios of the atoms in a compound. It is the simplest compound. Formula mass, it tells the actual number of atoms in a compound, and there is a formula like multiple is equals to molecular mass over empirical formula mass. We can find anything from this formula. Now I'll proceed towards measuring masses. There are some measuring masses. Mass is amount of matter in an object, and matter describes anything with a physical presence, anything you can taste, touch, or smell. And weight is a term measures the force with which gravity pulls an object towards its center. So measuring lengths, as I have already say you that we'll talk about it. There are some measuring lengths like meter and different scales through which we temperature measuring scales like Celsius scales, Fahrenheit scales, and Kelvin scales, etc. There are some measuring units which are measuring volumes like area and etc. So that's all from my side. I hope that you like the that my presentation. And I'll talk much about fundamentals of chemistry and all that. Like I'll talk about atoms, then elements formed from atoms, then molecules, ion compounds, different bonding like covalent bond, ionic bond, etc. And one more thing I want to tell is that uh, chemistry is the most important subject we study in our life, because there are various chemical reactions that occurs in our surroundings and in our environment, is just because of chemistry. So these were the some basics and fundamentals of chemistry which I have told you. So thank you very much. That's all from my side. Have a good day.